Nigeria's ongoing battle against corruption has suffered another setback as the country slipped 2 places to 142nd out of 182 nations in the 2025 Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index. Despite maintaining its score of 26 out of 100, the drop in ranking underscores the slow progress in tackling public sector corruption, even as President Bola Tinubu continues to pledge decisive action against graft. The change in rank reflects the inclusion of 2 additional countries on the latest index, rather than an improvement or deterioration in perceived corruption. The TI index measures the perceived level of public sector corruption on a scale from 0 to 100, where 0 represents a highly corrupt environment and 100 indicates a very clean one. In his latest report, TI highlighted that Sub-Saharan Africa remains the lowest performing region globally, with an average score of just 32. We're now being joined by Auwalu Musa Rafsanjani, who is Executive Director of Civil Society Advocacy Center, to discuss the latest global anti-corruption perception of Nigeria. It's good to have you with us.
Good to see you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, why do you think Nigeria is consistently poorly rated when it comes to anti-corruption efforts in the country so far?
Well, although Transparency International is not measuring the efforts of anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria like EFCC, ICPC, NFIU, and Code of Conduct, it's basically looking at public sector corruption and collapse of public sector integrity. And that's what is putting this country in a very negative disposition. This is despite the fact that a lot of effort are being done by the various anti-corruption agencies. But the public sector corruption continue to undermine the integrity of this country. Nigerians are battling with public sector corruption in education, in healthcare, in the security sector, in power, in various public institutions, including legislature, judiciary. If you look at the Auditor General account in his report, he pointed out at least 128 billion naira could not be accounted for from the Ministry of Power and the related electricity companies. This is a huge amount, and that is why you can continue to see that Nigerians are not really having required electricity. If you look at the report of the Auditor General again, he has also indicted National Assembly for collecting bribe, and some of the members themselves, they complain that before they are allowed to present motion, they have to pay bribe. This is a very serious issue. If you look at the same Auditor General reports in the judiciary, as collaborated by the NBA president, they have also highlighted the deepening concern of corruption in the judiciary, where some people believe that they can just procure judgment, and access to justice is becoming an illusion for ordinary Nigerians. When you look at the corruption in the security sector, as even alleged by the same Auditor General and even collaborated by the National Security Advisor sometime last year, that arms and ammunition are being, sold to criminals. There's no way you can improve your corruption perception or your corruption rating if a major institution like this is going to be involved in this kind of scam. When you look at the various public sector, is it in education, is it in the healthcare system, Nigerians are facing daily corruption experiences. So there's no way corruption perception index will improve if this real-time corruption are happening in Nigeria. So Transparency International is issuing this report as a wake-up call so that we can look at gaps and block those leakages. Our financial institutions are just simply gateway of money laundering. If you see the amount of money that is going out of this country, courtesy of the looseness, courtesy of the gaps we have in our financial institution, is so worrisome. Even the EFCC, ICPC have collaborated this corruption based on the recoveries they are making. look at the amount that EFCC have recovered in the last 1 year. Look at amount of the ICPC that have recovered in the last 1 year. That's to tell you the intensity, of corruption in Nigeria. At the state level, virtually corruption and in the local government and the state level is having its field day. So there's no way a country can overcome this one. Institutions are weakened. There's no transparency and accountability in governance and in expenditure. There's no way you can improve in corruption if citizens on daily basis are facing this cankerworm of corruption from extortion. You cannot get a job, you have to pay bribe. You cannot get admission, you have to pay bribe. You cannot get promotion, you have to pay bribe. You cannot simply get any public services without encountering corruption. There's no way anybody will take us serious. If you are looking for driving lesson, you have to encounter corruption. If you are looking for international passport, it is also, you have to, experience corruption. In the, on the road, police, despite the fact that Nigerians have been crying over this extortion that they are doing, they extort money, they collect money, and any driver that does not give, he is likely going to lose his life, as we have seen in many instances. So, in order to overcome this menace of public sector corruption, government must have the political will to decisively take certain reforms. One of the reforms that government must do has to do with the ongoing electoral reforms. Because if the electoral law, because in Nigeria, we are practicing democracy, and the only way leaders can come is through democracy, through election. And if the process is flawed, it allows for corruption and corrupt people using dirty money to take over the affairs of the country, then there's no way you can deal with corruption. So political corruption is a major stumbling block towards addressing pre-corruption in Nigeria. We need to reform political parties. We need to install accountability in governance. We need to ensure that civil service is reformed, because if the political leadership is rotten, it is expected that the civil service, the bureaucracy, they should be able to, be able to have integrity. So if there is a collapse of institutional integrity in the country, that's a major problem in terms of dealing with the corruption. So I'm saying that this report is a pointer and it's a clerical call that we need to address fundamental issues.
Indeed.
We need to do reforms that can actually help to reduce the menace of corruption. We must make sure that people who have looted this country are not rewarded with a political appointment or are not being covered. That's the only way you can begin to reduce instances of these high-profile, corruption cases. If you don't try them, if you don't, investigate them, and they just simply come to your party and they are protected, the corruption will increase. And if our institutions are also reduced to just nothing but rather an institution that people use money to get in there, not merit, not any system that clearly states how people should be recruited, how people should be promoted, then it will be difficult for us to overcome the challenges of corruption we are facing. Because if you are a security person, you pay bribe to get promoted, you pay bribe to be posted to what they call lucrative places. You don't expect any seriousness in terms of tackling the menace of violence attack on Nigerians that is happening every day.
Mr. Rafsanjani, it's so glaring that you are very passionate about this topic. I appreciate how you've been able to connect all the dots from the collapse in the public sector integrity to security to National Assembly, all these areas where we have corruption. But one of the things that you mentioned that needs to be done to address this is that there needs to be political will from the current administration. How confident are you that that will be the case and that Nigeria might actually not be in a worse, not get a worse number or placement this time next year?
So when you want to deal with the corruption in a country, it's not just the federal government, because in Nigeria, we have three tiers of government. We have local government, we have state, and we have federal. So at federal level, you have some resemblance of a system that could help, deal with issues of corruption. At the state level, I can tell you that 80% of the states you have in Nigeria don't have even a replication of ICPC or EFCC in their state. So which means that corruption and corrupt practices, are just going unchecked because they undermine even the basic rules. Because even without anti-corruption institutions, there are supposed to be rules and regulation. There are supposed to be financial regulation. But you see, some people just ignore that. So if you are dealing with the issue of corruption, it's not just the federal government. It is also at the local government level. It is also at the state level. And it also involves virtually everyone, even at the family level. You cannot come and be celebrating crooks, criminals, looters, simply because they come from your ethnic group, or because they come from your religious identity, or they come from your zone, or whatever you call it. You cannot be celebrating people who have instilled misery and hardship on Nigerians simply because of ethnic identity or religious identity. If you are a criminal, you are a criminal. If you commit crime, you have committed crime. Don't cover up simply because of political consideration or because of those identities that have continued to undermine the effectiveness of governance system in Nigeria. So if we are serious, the political will that we must have must come from, since we are practicing democracy and we are having political parties, you have to have reforms in the political party to have parties that are actually identifying these institutions or these reforms as key agenda in their manifesto, in their campaign. Then you need to ensure that party membership, participation, involvement and ownership are also strengthened, because when the political parties is hijacked by people with dirty money, some of the people who claim to be members, they are just there without participating in anything. Right. That's a big challenge. So hijacking political party using dirty money to procure appointment and election is one of the major problems that must be addressed if we want to improve in the fight against corruption, because the same criminals and crooks who have hijacked power cannot be able to deal with this matter. So until we have Nigerians with impeccable character, with integrity, with track record that are occupying various offices, whether political office or bureaucratic offices.
All right. On that note, Auwalu Rafsanjani, Executive Director, CISLAC, would like to thank you for your thoughts on those issues. Good to have you with us as always.